Ælfflæd was the second wife of Edward the Elder. Her exact birth date and year are unknown, but she was probably born around the 880s. Her father was Ælldorman Aethelheim of Wiltshire, and her mother was unknown. Most of her early history was not recorded. Around 899 and definitely by 901, Edward the Elder's first marriage to Ecgwynn had ended. We know their marriage ended by 901 because Ælfflæd attested a charter of Edward and was recorded as the king's wife. Edward's marriage to Ælfflæd was intended to help improve his position in the kingdom. When Edward came to the throne, his cousin Æthelwold also petitioned to be king. As the eldest surviving son of Æthelred I, the older brother of Alfred the Great, Edward's father. Æthelwold and Edward went to war against each other, which ended in Æthelwold's death and Edward being proclaimed as the king. Ælfflæd had little power as the king's wife. She may have been crowned, but in the only charter she attested to, she was just named as the wife of the king, and not queen. Edward relied heavily on his sister in his campaign against the Vikings and the Danes. So Ælfflæd's position was not secure, nor deemed important. This can be seen by the fact that little of what Ælfflæd was doing during her marriage to Edward was recorded. Due to the fact that they had 8 children together, and Edward was frequently campaigning, they must have been together quite often. Their children were Ælfward, Edwyn, Ecgwynn, Ealdhild, Eadgaith, Ælfgifu, Ealdflæd, and Æthelhild. Despite a successful marriage in 1919, their marriage ended, whether by Æthelflaed's death or by Edward setting her aside to marry another. If he did set her aside, this would have been surprising, as Edward had many adult sons now and no need to produce more heirs. If he set her aside, it was most likely because he was turning his focus to York, where Ragnar the Norse Viking had captured the city, and Edward needed alliances. He went on to marry Ecgwynn of Kent. During this time, it was common for kings to annul their marriages and marry new wives when there was a need to. As Ælfflæd had never been crowned, her position at court was unstable and there was nothing to protect her. After Edward the Elder's death, Ælfflæd's eldest son Ælfward possibly became king for 16 days before he passed away. But this was unlikely as Edward already had an older son by his first wife called Æthelstan, who was recognised as king and ruled until 939. Unfortunately for Ælfflæd and her legacy, not much is recorded about her. Perhaps if her son Ælfward had not died just 16 days after Edward's passing, he might have been recognised as king over Æthelstan and more of Ælfflæd's life would have been recorded.